Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. I am super excited today to have my good friend Mo Childers on the show. Welcome to the show, Mo.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And this is Mo's first time on Real Film Snobs. It only took me 20 years to convince her to come on the show. No, not been 20. I've been doing the show 20 years, but I think we've been friends for I don't know how many years, a long time.
At least 15, yeah.
Is it about 15? I couldn't remember. Time flies when you're having fun. So, yes, Mo, I've been trying to get her on the show, and she is I like to call her my soul sister. So, I'm very excited to have her on the show today. And Mo, of course, one of the things you and I have in common is our love of old movies, classics. And so, we are going to do a whole episode today looking at underrated Cary Grant films. And by underrated, we mean not the super famous ones that everyone knows that are on like every list, like Bringing Up Baby in Philadelphia Story and the Hitchcock ones like North by Northwest, but a little bit lesser known, although a couple of these were pretty big hits. But so Mo, just so people can get to know you a little bit, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite films of all time.
I think my favorite probably Cary Grant movie is Bringing Up Baby with
Yeah.
Katharine Hepburn. And a more modern film that I really like, although it's, I guess, quite a bit old too, is The Shawshank Redemption. And I also love Stephen King, so brings the two together.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't remember how we even I know when we both worked at, well, you still work at OSU, but when I worked at OSU with you, which is how we met, I don't know how we started getting talking, how we figured out that we both love older movies, but you like some of the cheesier ones that I don't like some of the Doris Day ones, but we
True.
in general love, classic films and have a love of that. Mo has, I don't know how many collections of different Cary Grant films that she's been given over the years. So we thought it would be fun to like explore some of the ones in those box sets are like ones that a lot of people haven't even heard of, I bet.
Yeah, a lot of them I have never heard of, and I still haven't watched them all.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was sort of the fun thing. I was like, well, this gives you an excuse to watch some of the movies in your collection. We did try to find some, pick ones that are available somewhere on streaming. So we can talk about that when we get into it, but we should probably get started. So, I'll kick it off with the first film. This is one I actually just watched recently. It was on Criterion channel for a while. I think it's left now, but it's called Big Brown Eyes from 1936, directed by Raoul Walsh. It was a great filmmaker, by the way. And this was one when I saw it come up on Criterion Channel. I was like, I never even heard of this film. And it's Cary Grant is a cop in the movie who is chasing jewel thieves. His girlfriend is played by Joan Bennett, who is absolutely terrific in this film. It kind of made me wish they had done more films together. She's originally working as a manicurist in kind of this. I don't know, I guess it's like a salon, barber shop, spa, and soda fountain shop all in one. It looks like the coolest business of all time. And but then as she starts to get involved in the case, she starts working as a reporter to start trying to also catch the bad guys. And so a lot of this, it came out in 36, but this film actually reminds me of a lot of pre-code films. It's a little bit racy and it's got the really snappy dialogue. It was at the time kind of a flop. It's not considered to be one of Cary Grant's better films, but in recent years, people have revisited and said, "Oh, actually, this one's pretty good." It's definitely kind of goes into that underrated category because I think at the time people thought the plot was a little weird, and it is. um, and so I'm curious what you thought about it, Mo.
This was one I hadn't seen, but when you brought it up, I found that I owned it. I thought it was fun. It was a fun movie. It wasn't like a, change your life kind of movie or anything, but it was definitely fun. And like you said, I appreciated the dialogue as well. I thought that was one of the best parts of the film.
Yeah, it kind of starts the dialogue that Cary Grant became known for, which is that really fast talking kind of snappy dialogue. But what I like about it is Joan Bennett really holds her own with him, which is actually something we should note for people that aren't aware of Cary Grant, although I don't know who those people are, but I think they exist. But you all should know he's one of the greatest actors of all time. But one thing about him that he was known for is working so well with women, which is really unlike a lot of the male co-stars of his time. The Humphrey Bogarts and those people that were very masculine, but also, tended to kind of overshadow the women sometimes in their films. Cary Grant always gave equal measure to his female co-stars and liked playing off of them and giving them a lot of the screen time. And Joan Bennett here is really, really fun as the manicurist slash reporter slash undercover detective at some point, which is a very odd pairing. But I loved this place that a lot of the movies set in, this place that was like a soda shop, barber shop, but then they did manicures and massages on the upper floor. It was just,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
got
know.
the impression it was in a hotel or something because a couple times they sent her up to two rooms to do
Well, I couldn't
manicures.
tell if the rooms were like private rooms for the ladies because it seemed like the guys were getting their hair cut on the main level down
Hmm.
where the soda shop was, and then the women were upstairs getting their manicures and stuff. I don't know. It was a very interesting setting. I just thought it's a fun little movie. So I definitely recommend it. I have no idea why it's called Big Brown Eyes. Is that just for Joan? It's a little bit of an odd title that has basically nothing to do with the plot, but
Yeah, I assumed it was her eyes were supposed to be blue, which of course you couldn't see because it was a black and white film, but they never referenced it during the film.
right, exactly. So yeah, anyway, it's a fun little movie. It's not a bringing up baby style one, but it's definitely one that I was surprised that it was as good as it was considering I had never heard of it. So, okay. So, do you want to move on to the next one? I think it's yours to
Yes,
introduce.
it is. So this is one of three films that starred Cary Grant and Dunn, and it was from 1940, My Favorite Wife, directed by Garson Kanin. And Grant and Dunn play husband and wife Nick and Ellen Arden. And Ellen returns after being missing and presumed dead. She was they Cary Grant's character didn't know, but she was shipwrecked on an island with another man. And when she returns, it happens to be the day that Cary Grant's character Nick had her legally declared dead and gets married. So she returns, finds out he had just got married that morning, and then there's a little bit of, I would say, insincere information given by her about the time she was shipwrecked. And Nick has a hard time telling his new kissless wife that she'd returned.
Did you say kissless wife?
Yes.
I don't remember that. Is that part of the? Okay, I'm trying to. Okay, so you went. So one of the things you failed to mention is that the man she was shipwrecked with was played by Randolph Scott,
Yes. Yes.
which is a pretty big component because Randolph Scott, for those who don't know, is like it was a huge star in Hollywood. He's known for westerns. So he's like this very rugged, masculine guy. Of course, now we know that Randolph Scott and Cary Grant in real life were probably lovers. They lived together for like a decade. It's not exactly clear, but it's pretty clear. So it's kind of weird to watch this movie as a revisionist of that because there was a scene at the pool. I think you'll know which scene I'm talking about,
I do.
where he's looking at this guy who's his competitor, right, to his wife. So in the context of the time, people had been viewing it like he's looking at him with jealousy. In the 2023 eyes, as I'm watching it, there's these fawning shots of Randolph Scott on the diving board and his rippling muscles, and Cary Grant's just like staring at him. And I was like, whoa, this is so homoerotic. I couldn't even believe it.
And it
Um,
wasn't just the diving, it was that he jumped into the rings and was doing these acrobatics, and his muscles are flexing, and then
yeah,
he
which
somehow
was
does a perfect swan dive
yeah,
from the rings
exactly.
into the
And then Cary
pool.
Grant's just sort of like staring at him and just like in awe, and he's supposed to be like, jealous, I think, but there was part of it that it comes off like he's like, whoa, look at this guy. So there was all of that too. But anyway, tell me what you like about this movie because you said this is one of your favorites and you've seen this one a lot.
uh, it's just kind of the goofiness of her trying to deceive her husband that she was she tells him she's on the island with she brings in a short little man that pretends that he was just interested in the flora and the fauna of the island, and of course Nick, or not Nick, yeah, Nick figures out that, it's this handsome, burly man that she
Hmm.
was stuck on the island with for 7 years, and anyone who finds out is just kind of like, what? And a lot of assumptions are made. But yeah, like you're mentioning the homoerotic moments, I noticed that when he's supposed to be in his office and Ellen brings in the little man that she's pretending she was on the island with, and meanwhile he's picturing the actual person at the pool. And they
Right.
show
Oh
it in
yeah,
the
that's the other sequence. Yeah, Cary Grant
yes.
has these like dream sequences where he's picturing
Uh-huh.
Randolph Scott and his muscles above him. I was just watching it going,
Exactly.
whoa. And apparently, it was his idea. He's the one that wanted Randolph Scott for that part. So he had some
Okay.
clout by 1940. And so just saying, so but Irie Dunn also is just fantastic on this. She's really funny. Like you said, she was in 3 films with Cary Grant. In addition to this, also one of his great films, Awful Truth, right?
Yep.
Isn't that
Yes,
Irene Dunn in that one? And what's
it
the
is.
third one? Oh
The
gosh, I didn't
other
write
is
it down.
Penny Serenade, which
Oh,
isn't
which is
really a
not a
comedy.
comedy. Yeah,
It's
that's more
more
of
of a
a
drama.
tearjerkers.
Yes,
I actually
exactly.
thought about that one. I'm not sure if that's considered underrated or not, but that would be a good one to review for a future one. Because I don't feel like it's always as well known as some of his other dramas. Another great thing about Cary Grant that we're highlighting here, I think you'll see it. This is mostly comedies, but the last one we're doing is a drama romance, not a comedy. But you think of the modern actors, how many people can do action, comedy, drama, romance. He did all of those genres seamlessly. He didn't do westerns as much like Jimmy Stewart did, but he was able
Yeah.
to do action films like North by Northwest, so it was thrillers. So, I mean, the range is pretty incredible if you think about it. And of course, a comedic genius, but the fact he could also transfer that over to dramas and romance. You don't think of any, I can't think of really any modern actors who have that. People tend to be very siloed now. They're a comic
Yep.
actor or they're a dramatic actor, which
Yep.
is really unfortunate. So, yeah, this is a really funny one. I hadn't actually seen it until this last year. So, somehow I have not seen it a million times like you, but I really enjoyed it. So,
Yeah, it's a fun one. I liked watching it again.
yeah. Yeah. And I guess because I hadn't seen it and I knew about because of that biography, different things that have come out about Cary Grant and probably being bisexual, but that he had that relationship with Randolph Scott. And so it was hard not to watch it with that in mind. I'm sure the audiences seeing in 1940 might have seen it a little differently. There's definitely an appreciation, regardless of Randolph Scott's rugged masculinity and body in this
Yes.
movie. So that they have some fun with. So, okay. Well, I guess we can move on to our next film.
Okay. Our next film, of course, stars Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers. And actually, Marilyn Monroe is also in it, and Charles Cogburn. Uh, it's from 1952. It's called Monkey Business, directed by Howard Hawks. And Cary Grant's character, Barnaby, is a research chemist, uh, sorry, chemist, and
Hmm.
he is trying to invent the a fountain of youth pill. And he and his wife uh, take the formula uh, that they believe is the fountain of youth formula, which we later find out wasn't, and act like crazy kids, kind of.
Yeah, to say the least. This is a very silly movie, but also I thought great. What did you think of it? Had you seen it? I assume you've seen it before.
I had seen it before once or twice. It had been quite a long time since I had seen it, so it was good to watch it again. But I I thought it was funny that everybody's all in the company he works for is all hyped up that he's discovered the fountain of youth, and of course he hasn't, and
The
they're
monkey
ready.
has.
The
There's
monkey,
monkeys in this movies. Yeah,
correct. The research chimpanzee
is
mimics
smarter than
the
Cary Grant. He
right.
is the one that figures out the formula that they
Yeah,
take, that they ends
exactly.
up in the water cooler. Um, so it's a very silly plot, but this silliness allows Grant, I think, to do what he does best, which is just go full bore into. I mean, the lack of ego with some of the stuff that he has to do in this movie. There is. I will tell people if you're watching it, don't view, if you view it from 2023 eyes, there's some a lot of political incorrectness in this film. Marilyn Monroe's secretary character is basically sexually harassed the entire movie by everyone. Cary Grant and the boss. Basically, at one point he says to her, don't worry about typing, so it's very clear that she has no secretarial skills and that he's hired her
Yes,
because of
he
how
made
she looked.
the boss actually makes the comment and says anybody can be a secretary.
Right, exactly. Because they say, why do you keep her on if she can't type? And so he says, well, anybody can be a secretary, but not everyone can be her. So anyway, and then yeah, and there's a scene with her and Cary Grant when he's on the Fountain of Youth medicate, where he goes out with her and they hit the town and go crazy. So and Marilyn Monroe, of course, has great comedic timing. It was really great in this just to see Ginger Rogers, and this is her, of course, a little bit more mature. She's an age appropriate wife for Cary Grant, which was also refreshing because this is during this period in the 50s where he was often being cast with people half his age.
Yeah.
Because he's a mature gentleman by this time. But Ginger Rogers is another great comedic actress who, again, after watching this movie, I thought, sort of like I did with Joan Bennett, I thought, why wasn't he cast with these for
Yeah.
more? Because I thought her and Cary Grant in this film have great chemistry. They have a passion. You can tell they're really into each other as husband and
Yeah.
wife. But then when they start fighting and acting like children, well, and then at one point they're teenagers, and then at one point they go back to being like little kids because they
Yeah, like
they drink
10-year-olds
more
or
of it, and it
something.
takes them even yeah. And that's the part where it brings up the other politically incorrect part. There's a part where he is playing like cowboys and Indians, mostly
Yes.
Indians, with these children. So just again, view this from 1952 lens. Although I have to say, despite how cringeworthy it was, that scene makes me laugh a lot because it's Cary Grant playing with a group of kids and he's having to act like he's their age, and he does a really good job. He's very
Yeah,
funny.
he does.
My husband walks by my entertainment room where I watch movies, and he heard me like I'm just laughing to myself. I was watching this movie and laughing out loud. And this is probably one of the funniest. It is the funniest one I think of this. I was laughing a lot when I was watching
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah,
It's
if you
very
can get past,
silly.
like you said, if you can get past that, if you realize what the era it was made and not
You just have
think
to keep
about it.
things in
Yeah.
their context, and Marilyn Monroe was always, sexualized like that, but
Yes.
she gets to have her fun moments too, where she's, especially in the car with Cary Grant, where she's just like reacting to his craziness, and she's got a little bit of an office crush on him, so that's kind of another funny thing. Well, of course, who wouldn't have a crush on Cary Grant? I mean, that seems like
Exactly.
natural. And then the boss, who is this character actor that you mentioned, what was his name again?
Charles
Charles?
Cogburn.
Yeah, he's in a ton of movies, that era studio actor. He's like character actor that appears in everything. He's
Yep.
great in this because he's like the old, he's the guy that's trying to make money off this, but he's also just goes wild at one point himself when he takes it. And so
Yep.
then everyone starts acting a little bit crazy, which I loved. But I would definitely recommend this one for the chemistry with Cary Grant and Ginger Rogers, and then just if you want to laugh, if you can just shed the PC stuff and just take it that this is a grown man acting like a child and that that's inherently funny, and he does it very well.
He does.
It's
He does great.
Although I did think it was funny when he got his hair cut and they were all like, "What is this haircut?" And I was like, "I don't know, it just looks like a haircut." But apparently for that time, that was like a very like youthful haircut that he got, like the buzz kind of
Yes.
cut. That's
Uh,
not something a man would do in 1952. Do you think that's
I
the deal with that?
that's what I was thinking as well. Aaron, my husband, watched it with me, and he's like, "What's wrong with the haircut?" I'm like, "I'm not sure, but I guess it wasn't appropriate for the time."
Right. I think it was kind of like that style that like a young man or a teenager would have worn, a little bit more of a buzz cut, whereas men in those days would have had their hair a little longer. So that's kind of an inside joke that I think in 2023 eyes I was, because it took me a minute, but then I realized, oh yeah, if you think about it, like mature men in that time period would have never had their hair cut quite that short. So you tend to see it more in teenagers in the 50s, I guess. But Howard Hawks, of course, one of the great directors
Yes.
of the Hollywood period in this era, and also directed Cary Grant in some of his best performances, including Bringing Up Baby, which
Yes.
is considered still to this day, it's often listed as the greatest American comedy of all time. So the fact he directed this one as well, while this is not Bringing Up Baby, the thing about Hawks is he has, as a director, great comedic timing, and he knows how to get every inch of performance out of Cary Grant, I think.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. I also found this to be a very fun movie. So, and you already know I love Bringing Up Babies. So,
Yeah, and it's also both involve animals. Interestingly enough, this
oh
one
yeah,
chimps, and then Bringing
yeah,
a Baby with the
leopard.
Leopard. I was thinking tiger at first. I was like, that's not right. It's a leopard. Yeah, Cary Grant with children or animals apparently is even funnier. So Monkey Business. Yeah, this one. I'm trying to think where I saw this one on. All of these are available either streaming or on demand. A lot of these, unfortunately, are not easily available on streaming. I think Monkey Business I ended up having to rent on demand. If I remember correctly, but it was only a couple dollars, on Amazon. So it's still available, but or you could be like Mo and just own every Cary Grant box set, and then you never have to worry about trying to find it on streaming. Because surprisingly, with the exception of his most famous films, a lot of these aren't like easily available on like for free on the usual streaming channels, which is sort of unfortunate. So. Um, okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is the only non-comedy on the list, but I thought was a really good one that I also watched, also through Criterion Channel when it was on there. It also left, but it's called Indiscreet from 1958, a little bit more of a mature Cary Grant, directed by Stanley Donen, is a director who also worked with Cary Grant quite a few times, including in the movie Charade. And in fact, they were making a movie together right before they made this one. And then it came up that this play was available to make into a movie. And Stanley Donen said, well, I'll make it, but I'll only make it with Cary Grant. Because they originally wanted, oh gosh, who did I read that they originally wanted for this part? Oh, now I'm going to forget, but it was someone else, not that I think would not have been as good. But anyway, it's based on a play. It stars Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman, who are, reunited after one of my favorite top five movies of all time, Notorious. They were in that together, which was a Hitchcock film where they had
Hmm.
amazing chemistry quite a few years before this. So then they were younger. They reunite as they become, so they meet. She actually goes after him, which, it's Cary Grant, so it's all very believable when they first meet. And then he tells her, I'm married, it's a no-go. And that doesn't dissuade her, which this is what I think was very interesting about this film. This film's very modern in a way. She's like, I still want this guy. So
Yeah.
anyway, they start a love affair up, but this whole time she believes he's married, and he, tells her he's married, and they fall in love. And then things start to happen. I'm trying to decide how much I should give away. What do you think, Mo? Should I tell people about what she discovers, or should I leave it to their um, what do you think? I don't want to do too many spoilers in case people
Yeah.
haven't seen this one, but let's just say that it turns out he was not being very truthful about his situation, and she finds out about it, and she tries to get even with him. So there is a little bit of comedy in this, but it's much more of a romantic drama. I mean, there is some funny moments with once she tries to get back at him, and she actually fails pretty miserably in her
Yes,
plot to
she
do
does.
that. Um, but it's a very interesting, you can tell it was based on a play because it's kind of basically, for the most part, the majority of the film is all in her apartment. I
Yep.
mean, there's a few scenes, I think, at a nightclub or a dinner, there's a few scenes outside of that, but it's fairly contained. I often don't like those kind of movies, but when you have such great actors like Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman to fill up the screen, it doesn't bother me in this case that it was kind of stagey feeling. I'm curious what you thought of this one.
I was a little surprised that all the people around her, well, it's her sister, her brother-in-law, and then the people that work in her household, that all of them were so, none of them were shocked that they were carrying on this love affair, even though he was married. Everybody kind of accepted it and went with it, which I wouldn't have expected it in that era, along with the fact that she was like, okay, you're married, but I have a feeling about you, and that she was willing to uh,
Right.
pursue him. I also thought one part that was interesting was when they went out to dinner. She made the reservation for three people, and then when they got to the restaurant, uh, Mr. White or whatever his name was had called and said he was so sorry he couldn't make it, so that
Oh,
it
yeah.
so that it all looked, presentable for them to be going to dinner alone, which
Right. Which is very interesting that yeah, and her character, she's a theater actress. She's very wealthy. She has a very nice place. It's set in England, which is also an interesting thing. Apparently, they set it in England because Ingrid Bergman was doing a play there, and Cary Grant said he would only do the film if Ingrid Bergman. It's sort of a funny thing. They originally hired Stanley Donen to direct it. He said he would only do the film if Cary Grant started it, and then Cary Grant said, "I'll only do it if you cast Ingrid Bergman against me because I want to work with her again." And then she said, "I'll do it, but you have to do it in England because I'm doing a play here." So it all kind of lined up. They ended up filming it in England. But they what was I getting to with that? Oh, well, it's just, yeah, it's interesting that her character's supposed to have given up on love. Like, it's just never going to happen for me. There's no men out there. And then when she meets Cary Grant, it's just like, oh, I was wrong. He's the one for me. And even though he's like, I'm married, I'm not available, there's no chance of us being together, she still goes for it. Now, her sister does, you said that her sister does, especially as things get more serious, does sort of try to intervene.
Yeah, well, the sister, yeah, she does. She tries to tell her like, well, he's not available. So,
Right. You
maybe
need
you
to
should
give up on
call it
this.
a
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
The thing that makes it work is they have a good chemistry, which is why I think he wanted Ingrid for this, because their
Hmm.
chemistry in Notorious is famous for
Yes.
the much sexual tension that they had, and they bring it back in this film. I think it is interesting that some of the reviews of it, some people thought that they didn't have good chemistry, which I thought was
Oh,
odd.
interesting.
I don't agree with that, but they, and they, of course, they're just so beautiful to look at. Ingrid Bergman, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful actresses of all time. That's just my personal opinion. Everyone's got their own taste, but I could just look at her, and even in this, I want to say even in this, she's more mature
Yes.
and not a young beauty like she was in Casablanca or whatever, and she's still just absolutely gorgeous. She aged like fine wine. um,
Agreed.
as did Cary Grant. So they just looking at them as but I loved the fact it was a romance, which Cary Grant did so well. And we had more famous films like An Affair to Remember that we could have done, obviously, but this
Hmm.
one I feel like again is a little lesser known. It was a hit when it came out. It did very well at the box office. And so that was great for their careers, of course, and very unusual for a movie based on a play, I think, too. I got the sense, did you not love this one, or you kind of
No,
sort of?
I liked it. I had seen it, but it had been a long time, and so I kept thinking there's something that's going to catch it at the end, and I couldn't remember until pretty far in, and then I was like, I remember now, and so yeah, it
Hmm.
does have that little kind of gotcha at the end, and I had
Yeah.
forgotten that.
And yeah, it's our, and yeah, when I rewatched it, I had for a minute forgotten. I mean, I remembered there was a thing like you, but I also was like, oh, wait, how do they end up together or not? Or what ends up happening? And so, yeah. So, needless to say, they're all terrific films. If you had to recommend like one of these four, which one would you say is the best?
Um, I think probably I would say My Favorite Wife.
That's your favorite. Yeah. Well, that's the one you've seen the most too, right? So,
It is, yes. And now we
yeah.
know why.
Yeah. Well, and I know you like some of the goofier Cary Grant tunes, and actually some of his goofier films are very funny, like Mr. Blanding Builds His Dream House. We have a bunch that
Yes.
we could talk about. We could always
Yep.
do a part two of this and even do maybe some lesser, like not as much comedies, because he also did tragedies, like we said,
Yes.
and some action movies. I'm thinking of gosh, he did some war movies as
He
well.
did. And I haven't seen some of those even.
Yeah,
Like
so that
he
would be
did
kind of
Gunga
fun.
Din. I haven't seen
Young
that.
Adin, yeah, that's an
I
example.
haven't
You
seen
haven't
it.
seen it?
I
Oh, good. Well,
haven't.
maybe we should come back if you're willing to come back, Mo. Maybe you can come back and we can talk about some like Cary Grant action movies or some of the
Okay.
more kind
That
of
would be
less.
fun.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you for being on the show. It was so great to have you. Time flies when you're having fun. As always, you can check out our reviews on our website, realfilmsnubs.com. We're on Facebook. Make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel, and then you'll get reminded whenever there's a new episode. We're on CC Media, Scan TV, and Silverton Corvallis Access Media in the area where Mo lives, and KMUZ Radio, KMWV. Thank you to our wonderful crew and our sponsors. And of course, thank you to Mo Childers for being on the show. And have a great day and great movies. Goodbye.